I'm your host, Lawrence Francis, welcoming you to the Winery Fingerprint series. Featuring producer conversations across wine regions worldwide, recorded in November 2025. In each series episode, I work with producers to discover their unique winery fingerprint. This has three essential components. One, it's factual, based in truth and therefore defensible, the solid foundations to build from. Two, it has personality and captures who you actually are and how you operate. And three, it drives an emotional response. It makes people care enough to pay attention, remember the details, and tell their friends. Tune in to each episode to hear what this model uncovers for each guest. A model so powerful that for 50 producers in the same region, it will uncover a unique fingerprint for all 50. Each conversation is a sample of the full process of discovery, documentation, and refinement I work through with my clients on the Winery Fingerprint program. Today's conversation features Joe Wiens of Wiens Cellars in Temecula, Southern California. Joe features twice in this series for two different projects, both in Temecula, where I visited in June 2025 at the invitation of Temecula Wines. Joe shows that the Winery Fingerprint model can uncover something quite different, even for the same person at different wineries. With the two projects reflecting the choice offered by Temecula, these two episodes show how projects within the same region can attract different audiences and give visitors a reason to visit both. I really love what we discovered together in this episode and how the Winery Fingerprint model accurately and meaningfully captures their story. Enjoy.
You know, it really started with my dad. He's got a degree in horticulture, and then he's got a degree in food science. And when we were little kids, he was making wine on top of the fridge at one of his college classes in San Luis Obispo. And then he worked at a lot of big food manufacturing companies as we were growing up. He worked for Gallo for a little while, and then we planted our first vineyard up in Lodi. We had always been kind of a green thumb family, a lot of epic gardens and stuff, but he finally bought some land up in Lodi. That's where we lived, planted a vineyard, and I think kind of initially was thinking, maybe just selling the fruit. The market, this was in, maybe 99, 2000. The market wasn't great for selling fruit. And then he decided, I'll just start making it into wine. So, started making wine. First commercial vintage was 2001. Okay. And had a small tasting room. It was actually a really cool concept in Lodi. It was called Vino Piazza. It was an old abandoned winery that had these huge concrete vats. I think they were at least 20 by 20, if not larger, concrete vats. And they'd cut doors out of them and turn those into little tasting rooms. And so it was kind of like a co-op. There was, maybe a dozen small wineries at this place. And that's kind of where we got started. But if you know anything about Lodi, there's a ton of wine and not very many people. So, a busy weekend day for us in Lodi was like 10 people. And I remember my grandma at the time was our sole employee. She was our tasting room server. And we had an event night where we expected a decent crowd. And we thought, okay, this is our chance to try to charge $2 for tasting. And I felt like we almost got ran out of town with pitchforks for attempting to charge for tasting in Lodi. So the rest of the family all lived down here in Riverside County, where we are now. We would come down, visit my aunts and uncles and grandparents. And I was, at this time in 2020, I was 18. So, but they were, they would go kind of wine tasting at this burgeoning wine country down here in Temecula. And, my dad, said there's no reason why we can't make great wine from the fruit down here. So him and his brothers, my uncles, kind of got together and they each had their own kind of strengths. One of my uncles is an architect, and he designed the facility. I've got another uncle who's a general contractor that did a good amount of work. Another uncle who's an electrical engineer. And then of course my dad as the winemaker, and it was, it was the smartest move they ever made, because it's, we went from 12 people on a Saturday to 700 or 800 people on a Saturday. So, and we kind of, so this was in '05 when we moved down to Temecula, and always kind of put our focus on winemaking. There's quite a few other establishments here in the valley that they have great wine, but they're also focused on restaurants and weddings and spas and resorts and hotels. And my family was never passionate about any of that. They just loved wine. So that kind of remained our focus, and I feel like it paid off pretty well. My dad was, he's a big what we call big reds or full-bodied red wine drinker. So kind of got early attention with our big reds, robust reds, and kind of made a name for ourselves in the valley. I came into the winemaking program about 15 years ago. So I worked in the restaurant business prior to that. Actually was down here for a short stint. I was a tasting room manager for the first couple of years as we got started. Went back up to Northern California, worked in the restaurant business again for a while, and then came back down in 2010 into the winemaking program and kind of took over from my dad.
Interestingly, you rated your origin story. I asked you to rate it out of 10, and you gave it a 5. And I'm just curious, what does a 5 mean to you?
It just means that, to your point before, that, every winery talks about their, medal winning wines and how they're focused on winemaking, and it's all true and it's all great, and it's served us well to this point, but it doesn't seem particularly captivating.
Got you. Okay. Well, that's fair. I've had a run of 10 out of 10 self rating, so it's a little bit refreshing to have a 5. But let's shift gears a little bit, and in that same questionnaire, I asked you, what is it that makes Wiens Cellars unique compared to any other winery? What's your unique selling point? So what was it that you felt?
Well, yeah, I mean, I kind of touched on it in the origin portion, but I feel like it is our focus on winemaking. It always has been. Over my course of being a winemaker here, if we ever asked for anything that we felt like would make the wine better, and we had a good enough case, there was no problem getting it.
Yeah.
And I feel like, just that focus on high quality winemaking. The other kind of big thing that we did when we moved to Temecula was established, our own vineyard management as well. So we have a full-time staff of amazing, hardworking guys that manage our vineyards, and so we're kind of in control of the quality from the grape to the glass, really. So that's been a huge benefit for us as well, I think.
I like it. And then you were even harder on yourself there. You rated that a 3.
Yeah. Again, just not feeling super confident about the excitement of that as a storyline per se.
Okay. But again, appreciate your honesty, and you're kind of, I feel like your trust as well, just to that we can do something together. So switching gears ever so slightly, then something that's been consistently coming up is this idea of the story that you tell to attract a customer is different from the story that you tell when they're already in the family. Where I'd ask you, to get an insight into that is to ask you about the Wiens customers. What is it that you think that they want from Wiens, and why do they keep coming back?
From the winemaking side, it's definitely our consistency and our focus on quality. We're very focused on Temecula Valley and kind of showcasing the terroir of Temecula Valley. One thing that I should have mentioned in our origin story is we did kind of take over, a good chunk of the west side of the valley. It's an area called La Cresta, higher elevation, closer to the coast. We got some vineyards established there early on, and because it's about a 45-50 minute drive from the winery, but because we already had our equipment up there and we had a crew up there, we were able to kind of take over management of some of the other established vineyards up there, and that, just that kind of exploration of terroir. We started doing vineyard designates, so single site wines in I believe 2012, which was pretty successful. So yeah, I think the customers are just really dig the fact that we kind of geek out on wine on that level, and then beyond that, our front of house is extremely welcoming, extremely educated. We pride ourselves on the fact that our tasting room staff, knows wine, appreciates wine, and are very gracious, and it's not a stuffy vibe. We're always very welcoming, and we've got a great front of house as well. So
yeah, and importantly, is the main focus distribution or hospitality or wine club or some mix of those? What would you say?
We've dabbled with distribution a little bit, with Costco, and there's a local chain here called Barron's, kind of, more natural focused grocery store that carries our wine. But yeah, I don't think that's necessarily our focus. I think our focus is, to continue to stay relevant in this kind of competitive climate, to continue growing our wine club. We're signing up a lot of people, but then we also have a good amount of attrition too. So it's a challenge to kind of keep people engaged in our brand and keep them excited about what we're doing.
Okay, and then I should probably know this, having been to Temecula, but could you just also describe to me, and I guess kind of paint me the difference between La Cresta and your other sites?
Yeah, we kind of hit all the edges of Temecula Valley and even a little bit beyond. So on the west side, you kind of think of it like Paso, where the west side, on the Cambria side, it's a little cooler, more coastal influence. On the east side, it's a little warmer. You might get a little more concentration and ripeness, but just kind of playing with these different sites. So yeah, La Cresta definitely cooler, still good diurnal shifts because of the elevation. There's another kind of unofficial sub AVA of Temecula Valley called Deleuze, which is just south of La Cresta. It stays cool, but the diurnal shifts aren't as significant because it's lower elevation. So definitely more temperate down in the Deleuze area. And then even beyond that, our obviously our valley floor vineyards. And then we also have two pretty significant vineyards that lie just outside of the AVA on the west side. So if you think of Temecula Valley as kind of a bowl, La Cresta is the west side of that bowl. And then on the east side would be our Sage and San Ignacio vineyards. So they lay just outside of the AVA, but we found that those vineyard sites have shown some really nice potential as well. Obviously drier, but still considerably cooler, with the higher elevation in the spring and cooler nights. And the soil type out there is very, very, DG, sandy soil. So not a lot of nutrients. We struggle to get 2 tons per acre on those vineyards out there, but the fruit that we get is often, hits that mark for intensity and concentration that a lot of our club members expect with our Reds program.
Got you. And is that now to say, I mean, the majority of fruit now comes from La Cresta de Luz and Sage San Ignacio? That be
yeah, not we don't farm that we don't farm anything in Luz at Wiens. So it would be the majority would come from the kind of the outside edges of the bowl, on the east and the west. So La Cresta and then Sage and San Ignacio would be the kind of outside edges of the bowl that we've kind of found, and it could be because the vines struggle a little bit more out there. We don't get the soil isn't as fertile, but we've kind of found those sites express some really unique wine styles, and I've been working with these vineyards now for 15 years, and there's definitely a different marker for the two sides. Like I can smell a glass from Sage and San Ignacio and immediately tell that it's from that side of the valley versus the La Cresta side, which is pretty interesting. So
I'm very happy, because I have something to share in terms of some feedback and actually a couple of ideas for, again, this kind of first step in the process, really, first step towards that fingerprint. But it is possible to have, sort of weird as it sounds, it's kind of possible to have two fingerprints, but usually, one of them will be kind of stronger than the other. And this process has also really been helping me, because it's forced me to define, what do I mean by fingerprint? That's a nice fancy metaphor, but what the hell am I talking about? Really? And what I would say is that to get to the winery's fingerprint, it is a combination of three things. It's something that is factually correct. So, we're not making up anything. It's something that just is, that we're talking about. It's got to be not only factually correct, though. It's got to have what I call authenticity, which I define as capturing something of the kind of the spirit of you, as individuals. This isn't just a Wikipedia entry, a list of stuff that you do. It's got kind of something more of your soul in there, rather than just a kind of a shopping list of where you farm, or grape varieties, let's say. And then it's also, from the customer perspective, it's got to drive an emotional response. Yeah. So it's actually got to move them, and all the things, get them curious, get them thinking, repel some people as well. There's nothing wrong with repelling some of the people if they're kind of not the people that you want, or they're not the right people. But then also attracting the ones that we do kind of want there. So I'll give you again. I'm so pleasantly surprised. With your own ratings there, and on your story. I think there's some good stuff there in terms of the origin, in terms of the move to Temecula. The family element is obviously all there, and then even just going through into what you said on the unique selling point, the quality, consistency, that again, those are all really, really important. And again, it just feels to me, though, as when you're in the club, when you've tasted the wines, when you've had the front of house experience, when you've been there and had your feet in the tasting room, and you've sat there, that's when those stories kind of work. That's when they actually do their thing. But when you're kind of in a straight shootout with basically every other winery of the world, that's when it's more difficult to stand out. And it's less unique in that sense. It's less, it's less emotionally driven. It's factual and it's authentic, but the emotion is not there. So there's something missing, from my perspective. But the last part that you spoke about there, I've got two ideas that I've got here, and I think the second one is actually the strongest one, and it's it's something to do with from the edge is the term that I've written down here. So it's again, I think it's again, I'll put it to my own test. It's like it's factual. That where you're at the sites you're talking about there in terms of La Cresta and Sage San Ignacio, they are literally, as you say, on the edge of the bowl, right? They're on the edge of the AVA, as I understand. That they're not on the valley floor. I think you've got authenticity again. I like that from the edge for you, because I think it's also true of Temecula. When I was going down to Temecula in what was it, June, wasn't it? I told a lot of people. I flew down from Portland. I told a lot of friends and winemakers and acquaintances in Portland, and everyone was kind of raising an eyebrow. They were like, "Oh, do they have decent wine down there?" It was a bit of a shock. So I would say, I think, I know you've got the great location and proximity to the Los Angeles and San Diego, but outside of that, I think it still raises a little bit of an eyebrow. It's like Temecula, and I don't think it's necessarily the people are being what's the word? They're being sort of derogatory in any way. I just think it's like, no one's told me they were going to Temecula from Portland. Yeah. It's like it's really novel. So I kind of like that again. It's from the edge, but again, I think that will attract people that like things that are a little bit different. If you just want vanilla, run of the mill, you don't want to go to the edge. You want to stay in your lane. You want to be right down the middle. And again, I think it again, that I probably got ahead of myself. I think it's that's the emotion, isn't it? I think that's actually, and it feels. I've just written down wine from the edge, or wines from the edge, and I won't say any more. I'll just let's riff a little bit on that.
I mean, it's definitely compelling. Something that I hadn't really thought about too much before. So yeah. I mean, I feel like that's a good kind of, launching point to explore that side of our winery.
This is it. And again, this is a process. This is the first step of a process. But the question I put down here, the question I always ask after kind of delivering that is, does it feel true? Does this feel like I've misinterpreted anything here? Does this feel, does it feel true?
Yeah, definitely. It's something that we kind of put all our eggs in those baskets early on, and really kind of focused our energies on these kind of outlying areas that everybody else thought was too cumbersome or too troublesome to deal with, and I feel like it's paid off. It's kind of funny. We're actually doing a wine experience, we call them, pretty soon. And I had the idea. This was, maybe 2 or 3 months ago. We had kind of been doing the same. Our Grand Rouge it's a beautiful Cab Franc based Bordeaux blend that we do every year, and it's a wonderful wine. And we've done the Grand Rouge experience now, probably half a dozen times over the last 2 or 3 years. And I was like, we need to do something different. So for this next experience, we're doing East versus West, and kind of showcasing the, that Eastern side of the bowl versus the Western side of the bowl. And like I had mentioned earlier, kind of my own experience of really being able to taste and smell the difference between these two regions, and trying to kind of share that and expose that to our customers.
I like it. And, as in real time, I've updated my own copy there, and I think it's, what wine. Yeah. I'm still not. Yeah. Wines from the edge. I feel like it's been done.
I like that. Yeah. I like that better. East versus West. You start getting a little Tupac Biggie with it. I don't.
A huge thanks to today's guest, Joe Wiens of Wiens Cellars in Temecula, Southern California. Reflecting back on what we discovered together, wine from the edges, that's my final recommendation for their fingerprint. First, is it factual? Yes, on many levels. Those vineyards from Sage and San Ignacio versus La Cresta, which brings out regional differences in Temecula itself. Personality, I think it captures not only the history of the Wiens family, culturally pushing the envelope, both in Lodi and in Temecula, sitting somewhat at the edge of the local culture while still being an integral part of the community, but I think it also captures something true of the region, Temecula, which itself sits at the edge of grape growing in Southern California. Finally, does it create curiosity? I really think so. What is wine from the edges? What's the relevance of it being at the edge? And am I interested to explore and find out more? I love that they are already thinking in that way with this East versus West tasting, and overall just not taking it too seriously. Visit wienscellars.com, the link is below, where you can learn more and find their main social media handles. The Winery Fingerprint is also the title of my upcoming book, which solves the customer attraction challenge for wine producers and regions, allowing producers to discover and tell the stories that the market is crying out for. I offer the Winery Fingerprint program to producers and regions, which is a process of discovery, documentation, and refinement. If you work at a winery or a producer group or a region, register for book updates and be the first to hear about live events at interpretingwine.com/WF2026. And join me on the journey towards developing 10,000 wineries to discover their winery fingerprint. Next time on the series, in episode 596, I'll be speaking again with Joe Wiens, this time focusing on his new project, Lost Ranch Winery. Subscribe to be alerted when the episode goes live. See you then.